Yeah. My name is Zoe Eisenberg. I'm the executive director of the Made in Hawaii Film Festival. Thank you so much for tuning into our first virtual panel in collaboration with the Hawaii Filmmakers Collective, Getting Back on Set and the Future of Filmmaking in Hawaii. I want to give a big thanks to all of our panelists joining us and to the Hawaii Filmmakers Collective for collaborating. And for everyone tuning in at home, thank you for giving me a reason to get dressed today. Before we dig in, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge what a difficult time this is, locally and globally, from a human rights standpoint, a health standpoint, an economic standpoint, and a national standpoint. So I hope you're all doing okay out there and that your family is safe and as well as can be considering. So for anyone who is not familiar, MIFF is a community-focused film festival run by filmmakers for filmmakers. The festival was supposed to happen in May of this year for our third year, but we postponed the 2020 fest until 2021. So until then, I am excited that we can continue to gather here virtually, and I'm excited to chat today. So today, we're going to be talking a lot about what it might look like to get back on set, what the future might look like for production on the islands, and I have a couple notes before we dig in there. First is that unfortunately, Vera Zambonelli, who is the executive director of Hawaii Women in Filmmaking, is unable to be with us today due to a last-minute conflict. But you should definitely check out that organization, Hawaii Women in Filmmaking. They're an incredible local organization committed to achieving gender equity in filmmaking here in Hawaii and beyond. So please check them out, even though Vera can't be with us today. Because she's not here, we do have with us instead Mary Baghdadi, who is the executive director of the Hawaii Filmmakers Collective. And I just would like to turn it over to her for a minute to tell you what HFC is all about.
Hey, happy Aloha Friday, everyone. My name is Mary Baghdadi. Like Zoe said, thank you to the panelists and Zoe for putting this together. We run a completely volunteer, member-based nonprofit on Oahu, on Waialae Avenue. We foster and showcase independent filmmakers in the state of Hawaii, so not just on the island of Oahu, through lectures, workshops, collective connections, and networking with each other. So I'm super stoked to figure this out with all of you. Thanks, Zoe.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for shepherding me through this is the first Zoom panel I've hosted. I've sat in on a few, I've been a panelist on a few, but this is the first one I've run. So thank you all for bearing with me there. Thanks, Mary. So thanks, Mary. Thanks to Gerard, Mauricia, and Roy for being here today. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to share your viewpoint on where we're at right now. Obviously, I don't expect any of us to have, these hard answers to what we're all going through, but I'm interested in just exploring together. But could we start with each of you giving a little bit of an introduction to yourself, beginning with Gerard?
Thanks for the intro, and thanks for having me on the panel. I am lead producer at NMG Network, which creates content, video content as well as print media. We've made a number of short films, a feature doc, which will be at HIF, called Huakai, Journey to Murray Mark. And we're working on a number of short films as well. And I'm also executive director of OHINA, and OHINA is for local filmmakers, local stories. OHINA Labs is kind of the new thing in our baby, where we take local actors, local scripts, pair them up with Hollywood writers who have gone through the process a bit. They mentor the local filmmakers, and we jump in and we help make the connections for them to make their films. And so we've been doing it for a while. Now it's more about developing the content, helping them find the resources, and then pushing them out into the world. And that's a little bit about myself. Oh, and I also write and direct, color, and do all that, and working on a bunch of projects myself.
Great. Mauricia, you want to take it next? Thanks, Gerard.
Hi, I'm Mauricia Palma Elmore. I'm the executive director for the SAG-AFTRA Hawaii Local. So I'm sure there are probably actors on this call, and hopefully a lot of my members are on the call too. I know that we let you guys know about it. SAG-AFTRA represents pretty much everyone professionals in front of the camera and behind the mic. So we represent actors, singers, dancers, voiceover talent, puppeteers, and so because we represent those people, and with the pandemic, we are really a very vulnerable population when it comes to sets, because for the most part, when you see folks on screen, well, until recently, you didn't see them with the masks on. So SAG-AFTRA, along with DGA, Teamsters, and IATSE, our sister unions in the entertainment industry, have come up with protocol. I'm sorry, can you guys hear the cartoons? You can hear the cartoons. Okay, well, it's 101 Dalmatians, just letting y'all know. It's nothing crazy because we've got a 7-year-old. Protocol. So we've come up with the safety protocols and the joint agreements with producers, the AMPTP, et cetera. And hopefully I can help guide folks to the answers that they need. Like Zoe said, I don't have everything memorized. I've got my little cheat sheet in front of me, but I can at least get you to where you need to go. And their dogs are starting to sing now. So I'm gonna put it on mute, and I'm paying attention and ready to answer anything.
Thank you. Roy, you're up.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having me. Roy Chu, I'm a co-founder of Island Film Group. I was a lawyer for about 20 years. And have been doing this since 2007 with my business partner, Rick Galindez, who's also an attorney at the same firm. He's probably on this call. And together with Krista and Joe Corella, who's our head of production and in-house editor, director, we are Island Film Group, and we've partnered with Hawaii Media Inc., the largest equipment, camera, grip, electric provider in the state, to provide production services to productions that want to film in Hawaii. My role is to develop original content. So I've been trying to do that for a while, but I've been really busy during COVID, writing some projects and gotten some notice. So actually COVID's been fairly productive for me. But anyway, I'm very happy to be part of this panel, and look forward to sharing ideas with you all.
Thank you. Yeah, it is interesting for us introverted creatives. I think we are some of the few that have been able to do a bit of work at home if our mental state will allow it. So I'm excited to hear more about what you've got going on. Before we dive in, should any of you watching from home have questions that come up during the panel, you can put them down in the little Q&A box. And then during the last 15 minutes of our talk, we will be going through some of those. So to kick things off, first and foremost, I just want to ask how you're all doing, and what some challenges that you might be facing right now. Anyone?
I guess I can go. I think it's been challenging, but it's actually been very busy. For us. We'll dive into kind of COVID stuff, but the environment has changed. You can't go crazy and wild and create any idea that kind of pops up. Our bread and butter at NMG has always been more doc style. So our crews have always been very small and contained. When I say small and contained, it's about 2 people on crew, doing audio, camera, the whole thing. And we have been pretty active in the community. And I will keep using this case study because I'm pretty proud of it. You got other people here, I heard it 10 million times, but Honolulu Theater for Youth was a theater that, they specialized in children's theater, and they perform in the theater. And when COVID happened, they had no place to go or perform. And so they instantly made a pivot to create a TV show, which is on Hawaii News Now. And so they reached out and they asked us if we can help create that 30-minute TV show. And now it is in its 2nd season. The first season was all about COVID and how to handle it for kids. The 2nd season will be much more polished and more evergreen, and something that we're hoping to sell. Of course, there's been a lot of ask for COVID-related videos for people and telling those stories. there's also been an international marketplace video. If you saw about Don Ho, we did that as well. A Blue Note COVID video, the list goes on. So there's this lots of little jobs to keep us busy. And then on the narrative front, I had a film that was in a can, and we had to do some pickup shoots. And it's a SAG project, so we followed SAG protocols to do that last bit of pickups, and we had to rethink our shots. We couldn't do the ones we wanted to do. We had to do what was most safest for the actors and the crew. And we got our shots, got together, and been finalizing the edit right now.
That's great. I love the kind of creative pivot there.
We've actually been pretty busy in terms of getting, you know, requests for bids and proposals on commercial jobs. We've also been pretty active in talking to producers who want to film here. I think that interest started when the numbers were pretty low in Hawaii, and they've kind of gone up. So, but we're still talking to them. So hopefully the numbers will go down, and by the time we get around to actually doing pre-production and production, we'll be okay. And as I mentioned before, I've also been trying to get some projects going on the development side, you know, in-house as well.
So I think pivot is the key word for this question. So for those of you who are my members that are listening, you know that we normally do at least once a month some kind of event, right, for members or for outreach. But with things as they are now, that just couldn't happen. So a lot of those kinds of events have really been being put out via webinar through our national department, through the PTEOE, which is the President's Task Force of Outreach and Education. So I can share these links later as far as YouTube channels and all this. And at the beginning of it, it started out just COVID resources, right? So even if you go to sagaftra.org, I think the first thing you'll see is COVID resources. Every state that we cover in our jurisdiction, there's all kinds of resources there, from your unemployment office to food bank, to some states actually have state-run artist resources that they can avail, that actors and performers can avail themselves on. So that's where we started out, and we still, you know, have all that there. But slowly, our national programs also have brought in more professional development kinds of offerings. I wrote down so I wouldn't forget, we did one on setting up your own home voiceover studio. So tips and tools for that, which when I send the links, you can click to watch those webinars that were recorded. We did one on auditioning and turning in your best self tapes. So, you know, these are the types of programs that are out there. And of course, as far as, you know, the day-to-day office, while I may not be in the actual office, this is my house, we are still, you know, working as hard as ever. And a lot of the day really is taken up with pre-production meetings. So like Gerard was saying, when a filmmaker or a TV show, now my real dog's barking, wants to start up and shoot out here, and they have to go through the safety protocols and also do the pre-production meetings. And we can get into those details. I'm gonna go on mute again because I think someone's walking by the house. But that's where we've had to pivot.
Thank you, Marisha. I love the dogs there. I had to actually go to my mother's house because I knew that my dogs would be too vocal, so I feel you there. Mary, do you want to chat a little bit about what's going on with you and or challenges or HFC?
So for HFC, the way we were able to pivot is just providing resources like different companies, classes around Island. Everything is virtual. We're still, even though I'm at the studio now, we're closed to having our members come in. But this really provided an opportunity for people to work on their scripts, share their scripts, read each other's, network virtually. We're running a producer's lab and a screenwriter's lab right now. So again, what Marisha was saying, the pre-production meetings are what our members are seeing. But yeah, in terms of like getting back on set, I would recommend to members just share resources when that time is right. You know, share set medics. I'm sure people will have questions on that later tonight. And share things that you're learning. I mean, the rules are changing. The federal and state laws are fluctuating constantly, as we sorted out just a week ago.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Every day is different. I want to ask us a really difficult question, which is, should filmmakers even be trying to get back to set right now? I know many of us are chomping at the bit to get back to work, and there's a lot of talk about how the film industry could be a vital part of economic relief for the state as we move away from tourism. But what is our responsibility as creative leaders to be sure that we are keeping our community safe? Anyone?
Yeah, I guess I'll keep jumping in because I have very strong views on this because I think filmmakers in their souls and then in what they want to do is create. This is a time where the universe and nature is saying you have to slow down, no matter what. It is like if you're going to create anything, you're going to be swimming upstream and against a tide. So the bottom line is what we tell our filmmakers is if you want to do the vision that you crafted before pre-COVID, that's probably not going to happen because independent filmmakers are not going to have the resources to do it safely because the top priority is always to keep your actors and crew safe. The white pages, the AICP, the union white pages, they're all about keeping everyone safe. And people tend to forget that. They're like, why is it they make it so hard for us? It's because no one gets sick and no one, the thing is, if people blow through those protocols, everything gets shut down. That's how it always works. So the protocols, they're designed if someone does, God forbid, gets tested positive on that set, there's so many barriers that most likely it's going to be low risk to other people on that set. With that being said, what we tell people is if you can tell the story with, minimum actors, not a lot of extras, a small crew, that's possible. But do not go past 10 because the guidelines right now, it's just not safe in general, and it's different with commercials and more short-term things because that's going to be more easier to control because you're doing one day at a time, and so that's easier to manage. But if you're planning on doing a feature film or a short film, it's just two things. You're gonna have to rethink your idea. That's one thing. Or two, you're gonna have to get everyone tested. That's just the bottom line. Now, the hope is that the testing will get better and faster. But the reality is that this pandemic is gonna be here for a while. So if you're gonna create, adapt to nature, adapt to the universe, because when you're creating, most times we don't have a lot of money to create, we're bootstrapping it. It is not worth people's safety to try to get all Rodriguez out there, okay? So we did it before. You do your own stunts, you're hanging out of cars, but times have changed, and it's not that time to do it, right? It's all about safety right now. I'll kick it over to probably Roy. Roy's got more experience in this too.
Yeah, thanks, Gerard. I agree with everything you've said. We've actually had a few remote shoots. We had one situation where we did some drone work and the director was, I think, in Slovenia or something. And so remotely he was able to direct that shoot. We had a small shoot on our soundstage, I think for Department of Health, and it was a very small crew. And so we were able to, manage things properly. But a lot of our work, normal work, depends on mainland people coming here, and we're trying to set up, we have the technology now to actually do remote shooting, but to the extent people need to come here, like for a feature or whatnot, I think that's going to rely on our ability to have effective testing made available. We have the modified quarantine procedure, which the city and county of Honolulu has approved, and that's still in effect. And we're hoping that people will be able to, utilize that. But obviously, to your question, our main priority is safety, because if one person it just takes one person to violate the protocols for it to ruin it for everyone. And we certainly don't want that, not in Hawaii. So because we rely on, mainlanders so much for our work, I think it's going to be, a challenge to, bring back production anywhere close to the level that we had before, unless we have, really good testing procedures. And we have testing through Dr. Miskovitz now, who uses the PCR tests. But I was just reading an article in The Atlantic about a spit test, a saliva test that can be widely available. It's not as sensitive as a PCR test, but there are some problems with the PCR test too. And if we can get testing widely available, I think that'd be a step really in the right direction. And really for people coming from the mainland, we really need for them to get tested not only before they fly, but after they arrive. Because you have people who might get on the plane not having been tested because they say they're going to go through quarantine, then they violate the quarantine, and then they wind up infecting a lot of people. Now, so far, I haven't heard that mainland visitors are a cause for our spike in numbers, but that's still a concern I have. And so I would like to see a protocol where we require testing after you arrive. And if you're tested, we're working with a line producer who was telling us about a project in North Carolina that he's working on. And they have their crew kind of divided up into pods, and their main pods with the writers, directors, and so forth, they're going to be tested, I think it's 3 times a week. And the other pods, the main crew are, oops, sorry, I triggered Siri by mistake. And they're going to be tested at the beginning and the end of each week. So that's $75 a test for a lot of people. It's very expensive. So the other factor, and I'm sorry, I'm sort of jumping around a little bit, is the fact that the new normal will mean that productions will take longer and they'll be more expensive to accommodate all these COVID things. That's just the reality. Sorry, I kind of went on for a bit.
I wanted to echo everything that G and Roy have been saying, because I absolutely agree with all that. But I also wanted to kind of point to the answer being, I think back to like improv and acting days, right? Where you say yes and. So yes, I think this is important. Yes, I think creating art's important. Yes, I absolutely think, we should make a move towards getting back to work. But I think the and part comes in the form of we collectively as artists, as filmmakers, as actors, as performers really need to have a shift in mindset, right? And I guess we could take that even, I don't want to get political here. We can really take it up a level. I think we as a community need to have a shift in mindset. If we can really, if we're going to get to a place where there is a new normal, or, yes, shoots are going to be more expensive and longer and all that, we're going to accept all that. We've got to get to this place where it isn't an argument anymore about wearing a mask, getting a test, doing X, Y, Z. These need to be givens if we want to get back to work. And I honestly, now this is my personal opinion, not the opinion of SAG-AFTRA or anything, but me as a human being person, just looking around and doom scrolling on Facebook and all that, I don't think we're there yet. There is still so much just divisiveness and polarity when I don't think it should be. It should be, this is science, these are the rules, let's follow them. And I think when we can get to that point, that mind shift happens, all of these other questions, they should fall into place. I mean, hopefully we can get to the place where tests aren't, 75 is cheap. I've actually seen more like 140. That's what I've been seeing around, where it doesn't cost $140 for an indie filmmaker. And just imagine you have 4 people in the cast, you're shooting for a week, that, I can't do math, whatever that is multiplied, that's it, that's your budget. So these are all little things, I know, but it really speaks to this greater universe of shifting our mind and collectively going to a place where this is reality and we all got to live with it. No more moaning and kvetching about, oh, I don't want to wear a mask, I don't want to get tested. Just, if you want to work, this is what we got to do. So that's what I got to say.
No, I agree with you there. I'm still seeing a lot of exceptionalism, meaning not that we are all exceptional, but that we are saying, well, yeah, that's great, but not me, except for me, I don't have to follow that rule. So yeah, let's talk more about safety protocols, because I know it's high on everyone's mind. I know the city and the county of Honolulu, they've released a set of guidelines through the Film Office of safe set protocols for Honolulu productions. I know Donnie Dawson did an excellent job with a white sheet a few months ago about how the industry could actually be an alternative for economic independence, you know. And I had an email exchange recently with Justin Feinstone, who's the Hawaii Island Film Commissioner out on Big Island, about the resources that he passes on to productions who are hoping to shoot. So I know that everyone is working hard to set up some of these standards. Can anyone talk a little bit more? I know Roy kind of mentioned pods, which are pretty popular on some of the larger productions. We have a lot of testing going. What are some other things that are being done to keep people safe who are back on set?
I actually was listened in on the HIF panel discussion yesterday, and Donnie talked about the fact that the high numbers on Oahu actually create an opportunity for the outer islands. And knowing some of my outer island filmmaker friends, there are a couple of them, one on the Big Island and one on Kauai, who both of whom are proposing filming in kind of a Tyler Perry setting, where they have like a residential structure that can house like 50 or 80 people, and create kind of this bubble, if you will, production bubble. So I don't know if those productions have actually gone forward yet, but actually there's a second one on Big Island as well. But, you know, that could be a way, you know, for the outer islands to kind of, you know, go forward in this time. Harder to find a place like that on Oahu. I think Oahu is the place where people are, productions are trying to find hotel floors that they can book, so you can do the modified quarantine and travel between the airport and the hotel, and the hotel to the set directly, assuming you get the second negative test after you arrive.
Yeah.
So, do you want to go, G, or?
Oh, you can go.
I'll go while it's quiet, and then we can, while no dogs are barking. Speaking of the hotel bubble thing, which I think is a great idea, I've had one particular production go through where that's what they're doing, and it's really intense, and there's a lot of planning, and I really commend the producers who are going through the thinking down to floor plans and traffic plans, and here's who's doing what in the hotel. And I'm not sure if any of our other sister union folks are listening in on this, but I know recently we had discussions with the hotel unions also, that this is a very real possibility, especially now that the numbers aren't, you know, what they were 2 months ago, that we do a big bubble base camp. I don't know if that's the official terminology for it, but so, you know, I think safety wise, again, if anyone is interested, there's the Safe Way Forward, which can be found on sagafta.org. I think it's really a good starting place. And when you're on the website, just, you know, speaking safety, we have very detailed protocols for things like voiceover actors. When you're in the studio, in someone else's studio, what do you do? What do you look for? What do we do to help, you know, keep our members and our actors safe doing that? Makeup people, you know, what's the protocol? And it really is about education, so that you inform yourself with the knowledge of, hey, this is what we're looking for, and this is how we stay safe. So I think that was your safety question. And I hope that I answered that a little bit.
I also wanted to chime in and make a comment, sorry, G, just real quick before I forget, about the masks, because I've been seeing more and more, you know, information recently about there's really a difference in quality between masks. If you can blow out a candle through your mask, it's not doing anything. So, you know, it makes me think that if you're wearing a mask, a proper mask, and you're observing all the other protocols, you should have a safe set, assuming the person is negative to begin with. So those protocols just can't be compromised. You have to follow them.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of good practice sort of things, which is there is, I'm going to give some links, but there is actually a risk assessment test to see, you know, the probability of someone getting infected on your set. You know, as the numbers rise, your probability of affecting someone goes up. So that's why we always say you need to minimize that risk. That's one thing. The second thing is outdoors is less risky than indoors. And, you know, a well-ventilated room is going to be better than a poorly ventilated room. So there are more things to think about when you're writing and concepting as well. And with the highway, we've had to use our brains a lot, because the first season was all entirely from home on iPhones, and that's about as safe as you can get because there's no interaction. However, the quality of it is iPhone. It's a great message and it's great content. We're proud of it, but it looks like iPhones. So the next level is that, we have established kind of bases where there is capacity to bring in people staggered. And the creative aspect of it is when we do a group shot, we do it with green screen, and I make a group shot. So I get one person at a time, one person at a time, one person at a time, and I stitch it together, and it looks like 10 people. And so we come up with those ideas because in 2 weeks for Duke's birthday, you're going to see a surfing episode that we did for Duke's birthday. And we did not shoot a single frame at the beach. It was all indoors. So did a whole surf episode without going to the beach. So it's possible. That's what I'm saying. When they say, so you're saying there's a chance. Yeah, there's a chance, but you got to rethink it. You can't do it like how you did it before. You can't bring in a gaggle of people all at one time. And I travel around with a COVID kit in my car. I got gloves. I got disposable masks. I got disinfectant. You gotta pretend that everyone's infected, and that's how you gotta approach everything.
Like the floor is lava, everyone's infected. Those are the two things. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. I know we have a lot of questions coming in on the Q&A. We'll address later about more safety concerns, but before then, I'd love to talk about beyond production. What are some of the ways that you see the industry shifting in the wake of the pandemic? Anything from distribution to festivals, like HIF is in the middle. I think it's their last day of their summer festival. If anybody hasn't checked that out, please do. They have some really great films that they're streaming now. I know that we're going to be doing more things like that in the future, just nationally. What do you think about just ways filmmaking will be changing in the future?
Okay. Sorry.
Or Gerard. You're the best, Gerard. Thank you.
I'm used to talking all the time, so I'm sorry, everyone. So this is going to shift everything. Theatrical is going to change. It's already changing. The windows are changing, which is scary because as filmmakers, we always dream of the big screen and dream of that place where everyone comes together and watches together. But the only way we can do that now is if it's safe. And the only way I can think about that is like drive-in movie theaters are making a comeback. There's more virtual screenings, and there's more outside the box thinking about how things are being distributed to your homes, virtually. There's a bunch of problems. So this is where I go into bad news. Bunch of problems is that what we're seeing when we see festivals do virtual, it's becoming more the same. So a lot of the films are getting lost in the noise. Filmmakers are saying, why do we go to festivals? We're going to release on our own. What it does is it forces the film festivals to keep innovating, which is not fair to them because they have a really good model, and it's something that has provided filmmakers as a platform to kind of amplify their voice. But it's also, COVID is unfair in general. It's affecting all of us to the point where we have to work 3 times harder just to do what we were doing before, so that's what's being forced on us. And it's also unfair because this is where I get to the advantage, is that most of the money that's being made is Amazon and some of the streamers. And that's where demand is. That's the good news. The good news is that there's still that great demand for content at a high level who are well funded. I think the hope is that we can have some of that funding for some of the projects that are in our community, because for the time being, we're going to have to rethink how we show movies and how we enjoy movies together. And the good news and the silver lining is I feel like once we get through this, the demand to be back in a theater, the demand to be with one another who are creating films is going to be super high. And there's going to be sort of this kind of theatrical 2.0. The windows are going to be shortened. Distribution is going to be changed because you see it with Mulan, you see it with some of the Disney Plus situations that are happening. You also see it with Trolls and some of those other films that are experimenting with it. But it just doesn't feel the same for the filmmaker. Filmmaker doesn't get that reaction. What I like to tell people is what this is doing is showing how much you miss theaters, how much you really miss them. So that's how I think it's going to change things.
I read about an antitrust ruling recently where the long-standing prohibition against studios owning movie theaters got basically reversed, and that's now going to pave a way, I think, for the studios to buy up all theaters, and independent theaters may have seen their last day. Hopefully not, because I agree with Gerard that every filmmaker's dreams is to see your film on the big screen. So we'll have to see how that goes. But at the same time, with the advent of Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and all even the networks now getting into it, like Peacock and CBS, there are avenues for distribution that are going to be on the small screen, but they are actually still very viable because people still want content. People still want to be entertained. It just may not be on the big screen, at least not for now, but it's, I think, still something to aspire for in terms of filmmakers, getting their product out there. But yeah, Mulan, I think tried to hold out for a theatrical window. I think it's opening theatrically in China, but I think they're going to go to the small screen here. And that Tom Hanks, war movie, the naval war movie, that was trying to hold out for a while, but then that went on small screen as well.
So I know that I think the focus of this webinar has really been, pandemic and COVID and safety. But I think with that question, it perked something up inside me. When we were talking about where are we going to go beyond this? And I think we'd be remiss if, when talking about where we are now pandemic-wise, we don't bring up also the big movement and the awakening to Black Lives Matter and those kinds of issues also. Whether it happened because of the pandemic or maybe people were thinking about it, is a reality, just like the pandemic is that there are protests happening, people are waking up. That taking in consideration what Roy was just saying about, all these different platforms also making for more opportunities, I feel like one of the things that can come out of this really is a blooming or blossoming, right, of content produced by folks who normally wouldn't have produced, stories that normally wouldn't have been told. People are now awake to things that we may not have been awake to. People watch movies differently too. I mean, not everyone. I'm sure there's folks who still, all they want is Trolls and Mulan, and that's great, right? But I think there really is a shift in consciousness happening where folks are looking at things. I can't remember what it was. I was talking to my older daughter about Breakfast at Tiffany's, right? And the kind of just racism that happens in that. I mean, I think that, all these different things, well, yes, they existed and usually just existed in academia and people looking at it through a critical race and gender studies kind of thing, but now it's out in the open. So I'm sorry that this isn't safety-wise, but I think this is one of the things beyond that happened while pandemic was happening, is that folks are opening their eyes. People are beginning to see that there is room for so many more stories. There is room to see ourselves, people that look like me, people that look like, oh, look, I just realized all three of us are people of color, people that look like us on screen. And I don't know if we would be having the same conversation in this deep meaning if pandemic didn't happen at the same time that protests and Black Lives Matter movements happened also. So that I think is a blessing, that we're open. Not only are we open to the stories, we have platforms to share them. Oh, sorry.
Actually,
I'll go
no.
back. I went
Oh,
on a
no, that's
tangent.
important. I mean, we were just sort of talking about challenges in general. It doesn't need to be safety, although that is a safety when we talk about human rights. That's, I mean, that is the definition of safety, right? So thank you for bringing that up. And I mean, it goes back.
There's going to be a true crime story, the story of Donald Trump. So watch for that.
Yeah.
I'm careful because I don't know who's
No,
on the
hey,
webinar.
Roy,
so
there's
I'm
already
just
a movie. There's already a movie. It's called Back to
Brendan
Future 2.
Gleeson.
Back to Future 2. It's happening right now, brother.
Idiocracy. Idiocracy.
He is Biff.
That's the one.
No, but the
Oh my
the
God.
there's a
Where's Doc
Comey.
Brown?
Comey
see,
has a
I
TV.
got to be
think it's a
careful
TV
what I say
project.
because I got all
And,
kinds of members on all the spectrum. So I'm being really
Brendan Gleeson is
Okay,
playing
we'll probably
politically
stay away
correct.
from this.
Yeah.
What you were
So
saying
anyway,
about masks, and this goes back to one of your second questions, Zoe, about as creative leaders in Hawaii, if we can't get organized on if we wear a mask, how can we get organized as creative leaders to produce content together? And as someone who has a following of people that I share a post on Facebook and they'll watch it, we need to be sharing voices of all different cultures, and what better opportunity for Hawaii to amplify each other's voices. And if we can first get organized about wearing masks, I think we can get organized about improving the creative economy in Hawaii, and I think that's vital right now.
Thank you. And then, so I want to take questions in just a few minutes, but that, Mary, leads us right into what can we be doing right now to work together to support one another, whether that's moving a project forward or explaining to someone why they shouldn't be moving a project forward right now. How can we be helping one another?
That's a good question. Multiple fronts. First one, wear a mask. Everyone has to do it. We will not be normal if there's no mask happening. So for you, Zoe, you got a little bit of leeway. There's less cases over there. So, I know, but still everyone needs to wear a mask. That's step one. Step two, there's still projects getting funding. Like Pacific Islanders and Communications has been funding and still continues to fund. So there's opportunities. Three, this is the time to work on your scripts and work on your creative. This is the time to really think through, sit down, try to think of a good story and dream up of what you want to do. Take this time to really reflect, on who you want to be as a filmmaker and how you want to create. Also, the fourth thing is build your team. Build a really good team. People tend to forget this. There are a lot of talented filmmakers who go out on their own and try to create. And I know everything I said is about the small crew, not a distant crew. But at the very least, you need a circle of people to help elevate your writing, your scripts, and also your production values. So, some independent filmmakers who are just starting out, you might have to do things on your own. But when you get to the next step, ask the HMI or ask someone who has better equipment and see if they're willing to help you out on something, once things die down a little bit more. That's what people need to do to work together in this time. It's remote. It's all remote right now, but there's a lot of things that are the same. And it really is about developing those relationships, developing your talent, developing your skills, and creating work.
Well put. Does anyone else have anything to tack on there?
I'd say keep the lines of communication open is a big thing. I think that tacks onto what Gerard was saying too. Sometimes we are afraid to ask the questions because we don't want to look, inexperienced or whatever. Now is the time to ask all the questions. I think you got to keep the lines of communication open, even if, you're not going to do a union job, or that's not in the cards now, but perhaps in the foreseeable future, you're going to want to use union actors and talent. I'm still here. You know, we still have the website here. It's for everyone, and you don't have to be doing a union project, which I hope you do, but you don't have to do a union project to follow the safety protocols, and know that the guidance is out there and the resources are out there, and we really are in this together. And that sounds so cheesy, and I've seen the little cheesy commercials, but we are. And I mean, I'm a resource. You know, I'm like I said, I'm not a doctor or an epidemiologist or anything. I'm a recovering attorney like Roy, but I'm here, and whatever we can do to help. I'd rather someone come up to me with 10 what they feel like is stupid questions and come out of it thinking, oh, okay, yeah, you know, this test is better than this, and here's a way we can collect, and here's the number for you know, a doctor who can help. Or I mean, you know, or COVID supervisors. That's a big thing now. When, you know, talk to someone. There are actually 3 right now that are certified, that went through a certification process to be, you know, the COVID specialists on set. So don't be afraid to ask, and to you know, send that email out to someone you may not know. Watch, I'm gonna get like 50 emails after this, and that's okay. It's totally cool. That's my job. So we can connect you with the right people.
Yeah, I guess echoing what both Gerard and Risha have said, I mean, you know, we're in Hawaii, we have the aloha spirit. And when people ask, there's a response, and a good faith response, and a desire to help and help each other. Like over at HMI, I've seen Dean Desjardins, who's one of the most experienced gaffers in the state, actually give classes on basic lighting to HBU students who are just coming over to check out the studio. We've met with filmmakers to talk about their projects. Funding is difficult now. We used to have Act 221, which was the investment tax credit. That's not there anymore. We still have the refundable production tax credit. The legislature is going to try and attack it again this next session, but we're going to try our best to keep it alive. But there are resources here, and there are people with tremendous talent. And yeah, there's a real need to kind of pull that together, and we can do amazing things. So I'm definitely on the bandwagon.
Great. Yeah, and I think the days of the ego-driven filmmaker should be over. And yeah, sure, in Hawaii we might have the aloha spirit, but outside of that too, if you don't feel comfortable asking your community questions when you're unsure of something, then you should reevaluate your community. It's my little 2 cents there. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
You're fine.
Because I was just gonna bounce off of what you just said, and it's a good point, which is if you want to succeed as an independent filmmaker in Hawaii, you have to have the aloha spirit. There is no egos when you're asking for things for free, you know, and you have to remember the people who gave you those favors because they got you your movie, they got you to where you are today. And the only way we move forward and we build a community is if people remember that and keep applying that. The moment someone gets, you know, their Academy Award and it says, you know, screw all you guys, I got my Academy Award, I don't need to help one another. You know, they're never gonna get our help again. You know, so we're on an island, we're in a state, big island, Kauai, Maui. We all have to work together. And if you want to create awesome films, there can't be any ego. There just can't be. And I have that rule. Oh, sorry, the dogs are barking. But I have that rule. I can't put up with that. No nonsense. You give me attitude. Anyone does any attitude, it should be fun when you create this work. And if you do, just go walking. Just go away.
I like it. Thank you. I do want to jump into questions now that we're talking about asking questions. Perfect. So one that has come up a couple different times in a few different ways is whether or not we think local actors will have more possibilities in light of the safety issues of bringing people in. So, you know, will they have access to even some of the larger productions like Magnum, or, you know, when they start picking back up?
I'll take the actor question. I hope so. I am in the works right now planning a SAG-AFTRA webinar with one of our casting directors here, one who specifically does the CBS shows. And hopefully we'll get more information from them, but that is that's the hope. And it does make sense, right? We've got the actors here, we've got the talent pool here. I know, union members alone, we've got, those folks here who are ready, willing, and able to take those jobs. So I hope that that's the case. But so for my members that are listening, look out for that. I'm trying to get all that put together so that we have something hopefully beginning of September for you guys.
And I'll also comment that some of the producers that we've talked to about doing their features here have talked about, we've discussed, COVID issues, and their desire is to bring only the people they absolutely need from outside and to hire everybody else locally. So that's good for us and good for local actors and local crew.
Yeah, that is the good news. And I'll echo what Roy said, because that's what I'm hearing as well from high up, that people are not flying in their DPs. They're looking for DPs that are here. And I am being asked, like, what do you got acting wise on Oahu? It's kind of got some acting chops, because it is safer if you're gonna, if you're looking to bring in production here, who can you work with? Because they're gonna go to their own homes, they control the bubble a little bit more, and so there is a good opportunity, and we just gotta get our numbers down and keep getting those numbers down, and then we'll get more opportunities.
So everyone wear your mask. We're getting questions. Thank you for that. We're getting questions, Marisha, on the SAG Safe Way Forward guidelines. Could you talk just briefly about what some of those are?
We can, I think for this, we can just do generally speaking. So generally what a set will look like, different from before, is let's say you're on a TV show or a movie that's going to be going for a while, and you're cast as one of the regulars, right? So what you will find is that things will be broken up into zones. Zone A, Zone B, and Zone C is everyone else. Zone A will be the actors and the people that are within 6 feet of the actors interacting with them. Zone B is your production staff and crew that are part of the set, but not necessarily interacting with the actors all the time. So maybe the people building sets, the people, putting the props together, etc. And there will be a testing scheme for those different zones. So this is all generally speaking, knowing that each production is different and each production has a different duration, et cetera. But generally speaking, it'll be regular testing for the folks in Zone A and also Zone B, but probably not as frequent, but definitely for Zone A, regular testing. And of course, PPE and enhanced PPE. And that's just how it's that's how it's gonna look differently. There are so for shorter durations, projects, let's say a commercial that's only shooting 1 day, while the guidelines still exist, and those are the guidelines we'll follow, we aren't necessarily going to be testing 3 times a week for a shoot that's only going to be 1 day. So we're still going to follow those guidelines, but now perhaps your testing scheme will look a little different. Perhaps if you are shooting on a Monday, for example, you might be tested, Saturday morning, Friday night. So you have your negative test by Monday, shoot on Monday. Or, maybe they'll just shoot Monday, Tuesday morning. So you just have the 1 test. So those are, it's not a difference per se, or it's not different than the Safe Way Forward, just taking account in all the guidelines that are in the Safe Way Forward and adjusted to the different shoots. Again, thinking of shorter duration shoots, how it's different from the TV show. So if you are an indie filmmaker making a short, you aren't necessarily going to have the same, testing scheme as Magnum PI or a CBS show, because maybe you shoot on the weekends when people are off work, and you shoot 4 weekends in a row during the month of December or something, right? That you're trying to shoot all that in. So what we would do is you'd start your process, you'd start your SAG-AFTRA process to become a signatory. And part of the process now includes safety protocols. So just like everything else you had to do to become a signatory, where you get your your LLC formation paperwork, all those things, cast lists, etc. Now this is another thing that you have to do also, and it's going to just be part of the process like everything else. So we've got to do our mind shift, right? And so part of the process is now, here are the protocols, how are you going to follow them, submit your plan. And I think this is where we left off before we started. We were talking about the plans that are coming in. Some plans are, hey, here's my plan. I've got my COVID supervisor answering all the questions. And some are really nice. Like I have like a 60-page plan with pictures and maps, and I'm a visual person, so I was very, very impressed with that. And I don't expect that from everyone. I understand, student at Oahu, West Oahu, whatever, doing a 2-day shoot isn't going to give me a 65-page plan. But we will be asking for your plan and your protocol. So that's really how it's going to be different, generally speaking. If you want to get into more specifics, of course, my email's out there. You can go to sagaftra.org, you click contact the local, it'll come to me. Absolutely, let's have this conversation. Let's have this conversation now before you start, doing all the paperwork. So just, you have an idea for the indie filmmaker out there, if you're shooting a short, what it is you've got to start preparing for when you start the preliminary paperwork, because it's just going to look different, and we got to accept it. So there's going to be zones, there's going to be testing. These are not things we're going to get away from. And, there's going to be PPE, and you're going to have protocol, follow the protocol, and there will be a new set person. There will be that COVID supervisor, depending on what different people are calling it different things, your safety supervisor or COVID supervisor or COVID specialist, but it's the person who's going to be in charge of making sure those protocols are followed and everyone's doing what they need to do.
Yeah. Thank you. That actually answered another question, which is about safety supervisors and the need for them. And are people going to be doubling up that role with someone else where you're like, they're my UPM and they're also our safety supervisor? Are you seeing that happening, or?
And we'd like that to not be the case. So it would be, what we ideally would like, and what I'm going to push for when you talk to me, is that there will be a separate person who that is their main job. And realistically, they're going to be independent. They've got the power to say, hey, put on your mask or we're quitting. Or, actually that's dramatic. No one's going to quit, hopefully. But, stuff like that. So they're an independent entity, that your COVID person. And I've seen it, someone's second AD is now the COVID person. While, yes, they're a second AD, but now they're your COVID person. I've actually seen, for a smaller project, they had a relative who was a pediatrician, and they brought her in as their COVID supervisor. So that's, they were lucky enough to have a relative who was a doctor who said, hey, I'll give you a few hours of my time on a Saturday. So there's that. And so what happens is I actually reach out to their COVID person. So when we do this, and Gerard can tell you, this is what I do. I will call them, and me and the COVID person will have a meeting and just go through everything line by line, so that I know they understand it. The COVID folks who I know are doing it now, I trust them. I totally trust them. I think they're good people. I'm not here to sell them on their business, but you can call me and I can, let you know they're good people. But I've also, like I said, I've seen it where it's someone's relative who's a doctor. I'm like, okay, and that counts. Or someone's crew person who now has assumed that role. So they may have the training as that crew person. They may have one point been that crew person, but now their main and sole focus is COVID safety.
And you can get that training online. I'm hearing you can become certified online.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there, for those who want to learn more about that, we're not endorsing any kind of program or whatever. I know the World Health Organization has a specific program too, but I can at least put you in contact with the folks that have gone through it, and you guys can, figure it out yourself, but I'll help you find those resources.
And so they don't need to have a medical background so long as they've gone through proper training.
No, it's ideal. Of course, I loved it that there was a pediatrician on set. She was pretty awesome and really strict and pointed out things that I think were really great. But the main thing is that they have the training. They're familiar with the safe way forward is a big part of it. They're familiar with the safety protocols. They, like I said, we don't endorse any one certification over another, but they can't just be some dude off the street and you say, hey, I'll give you $50 and a sandwich to be my COVID person. I don't know. Hopefully it's something more substantial than a sandwich, but there.
I don't know. There's a lot of indie filmmakers out there who might want to work for a sandwich, so you never know. Someone asked if we think that stand-ins will be eliminated or if they will be relied on even heavier now.
What I've got on stand-ins, just from what I've seen, is they are actually, without giving, I'm trying to think of what I can say and what I can't say, like confidentiality. I can confidently say that stand-ins have not been eliminated. How's that? I've seen people hiring stand-ins. I've actually heard, now that's things I can confidently say and, being confident. And I have, heard things here and there that they're being put on weekly contracts. So that's I've not seen that contract, so I can't tell you, hey, I saw this with my own eyes, but this is what I've heard is that, they will be put on a weekly. But I also know that they're still, stand-ins are still working as far as I can tell.
So thank you. Someone just asked a question, and this is going to be our last one because it is 5 o'clock. But that if they're on a set that they don't feel is being COVID compliant, who do they go to so that they can still remain anonymous? And that's a great question for Marisha to answer, but also what if it's not a SAG production?
So if it's SAG-AFTRA, it's me, and my members have my cell phone, all 1,000 of them. So they come to me, and also they can call 1-844-SAFER-SET. That's the main hotline, but most everyone who's a member here has my cell phone, and they can call me. Also, your COVID supervisor is someone that you should be able to, if this was done properly, you would have had a COVID meeting prior to shooting, and in that meeting, in that health and safety meeting, the COVID supervisor and his or her team would have been introduced. You could go to any of those folks because they are supposed to be independent entities.
Yeah, I'm gonna bounce in here because I saw a question, and I'll just answer that question at the same time, which is you can't just take the test and be like COVID master. You need to know a lot of stuff. You know how production works. That's one of the most important things, because if you just took the test and you don't know how production works, it's not going to be helpful. Because there's certain departments that interact more with other departments. There's other departments that don't need to interact as much. I just want to make the point that you just can't take the test and be like the specialist. And it really does need to be one person who is just overseeing the whole thing. Like, hey, don't do that. Because again, there needs to be checks and balances. One person ruins it for everyone. It destroys everything. And I've already seen productions with 20, 30 people on a set. And I'm just like, what are you guys doing? So a COVID specialist would have shut that down. So that's why you have someone that knows all avenues of safety, production, and also just not a, hey, that's okay. No, it needs to be, no, that's not okay. Don't be doing that. And that's what a COVID specialist should be doing.
Oh, Roy, you're still muted.
Oh, am I still muted?
No.
I was just gonna say all our productions is SAG, so yes, they can call Marisha.
Yeah, call Marisha. Well,
you guys are awesome. I love it.
Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we're a bit after 5 now, so I want to thank you all for sitting in with us. I really appreciate your time, both everyone on the panel and everyone watching from home. Please, Mary did offer to send out a list of some of the resources that we talked about, including the PDF of SAG-AFTRA's Safe Way Forward, including the white sheets that the county and the state have sent out. So if you did sign up for the webinar, you will get an email at some point in the near future outlining all of those things so that you can have them. If you want to talk to us, you can reach out to me through MIF's website. You can reach out to Mary through HFC's website. Pretty much everyone on this call is pretty easy to track down. Marisha said she has over 1,000 people with her cell phone number, so I bet it wouldn't be too hard to find that. But please don't call her for non-SAG related things.
It's okay, they'll just get the dogs and the kids in the background. This is, new normal, right? Here's our new normal, man.
They'll get 101 Dalmatians in the background. Yeah.
I do want to put a shout out to Gerard for his recent Emmy wins.
Yeah.
Another media group, so for that. And also there's a Facebook group that we started called Hawaii Filmmakers Forum. So, SAG members are obviously welcome, and there, we post stuff there relevant to the film community in Hawaii, and it's another way for us to kind of get together and stay on the same page.
Well, to say what I said about egos, It's a team effort, not me. I didn't do anything.
No.
It takes a team.
But if you guys come to our house, Zelda, the first thing she does, not that we're having lots of visitors because we don't, but you know, sometimes some people come by. First thing Zelda does is she brings an Emmy and shows people, look what my daddy won. So,
but I always have to be
can
clear,
say I'm very proud of you.
and I always have to be clear. It is a team because not everyone gets the trophy, and it's not fair because everyone that should be getting a trophy, and it's everyone that's involved, right? And I always want to remember, and I'm always very mindful of everyone that puts their energy and their heart into a project. So, and that's why I always want to say it's not about ego. It is a team sport. It is not NASCAR where there's a driver who gets all the glory. It's much more like a team. So let's keep doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mary, for helping me pull this off.
Yeah.
And everyone have a great weekend, all right?
Thanks for having us.